Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So before I start, I want to tell you that the writer's account for this story is recover. Apparently quotes to his words, he got his account banned or deleted for some reason, but it's recovered so we can continue with this series. So let's begin. The day had been tame, to say the least, at least to the teachers it was. This entire day there hadn't been the need to call a student out for elimination. It was unsettling to the teachers. While they should be glad the day had been peaceful, they were still restless. Pretty soon this day would end and Lucifer would be back. So for right now, they were preparing themselves. Anything could happen. While their guard was up, all they were seeing right now was a peaceful scene. Mei and Izuku were cuddled together in bed, a sight which made Midnight coo sweetly when she first saw it. Izuku had yet to make any moves, and other than a close call with Shinso on their date where Izuku may or may not have made Power Loader shudder with disgust, it was but a small hiccup to a rather calm evening. That wasn't all that happened in the day, as the staff was able to see Ibara in action, and contrary to how Vlad had thought she was good at surveillance, she was undetected throughout her task, so much so that Aizawa was impressed with how she was doing. The hero team, on the other hand, ran their patrol routes religiously. Every 10 minutes those on patrol reported directly back to Kendo. The team ran like clockwork, looking for an enemy that wasn't even there. Toshinori looked at the monitors, and more specifically Izuku's, especially when Mei had started talking about his physical changes. All the retired hero could do was sigh. He had nothing to say. And his thoughts, well, it's not like they would matter anymore. His wish to go back and rectify his mistakes with Midoriya was impossible. He watched as the two kids stared each other in the eyes until the apartment door clicked open, alerting the rest of the staff, who tuned back in. While they could see it was Ibara walking in, the same could be said for Izuku, who without hesitation went for his gun before telling Mei to hide. Aizawa nodded his head. Izuku was cautious, yet had no hesitation when a situation raised, a trait that the fake Midoriya had as well. Vlad watched as Izuku's hand remained on his gun while Ibara walked inside, closing the door. A part of him hoped Izuku wouldn't wait to pull the trigger, especially if it meant his student could get away from the boy as fast as possible. Izuku, however, was more cautious than that. He waited just enough for Ibara to reveal herself, and as if nothing happened, Izuku's guard was lowered and his hardballer was slipped into his pants without any indication he had it in his hand. Ibara was none the wiser as she greeted Izuku with a bow. Not only does he have her mind, but her loyalty and now her respect. Sighing, Vlad was bitter. But he sat back, arms crossed. There wasn't anything he could do at this point. He just wanted Ibara to snap out of it once the game was over. Greeting Ibara back, Izuku cut straight to business, asking the routes, which Ibara marked down on a map of the city. The teachers watching this saw just how far ahead Izuku could be if he were to do this right. Humming to himself, Snipe looked through the monitors of the city, thinking to himself until he was questioned. "What are you thinking, Snipe?" Present Mike turned to his fellow teacher, looking curiously at the man. "These patrol routes would be perfect for a choke point. If I was in Midoriya's position, I would set blocks closing off one path. With Midoriya as sniper, I would sit on top of a building and pick off the heroes as they try to walk through. With Midoriya's influence over the people, he could make a roadblock of living shields. It would be perfect." Snipe's explanation was a large possibility. With Izuku's skills, of which he trained along with Izuku's maneuverability, would make a devastating pairing. The staff could see where Snipe was coming from, but they didn't have experience with weapons, nor did their quirks utilize them, so they were just going off of what the hero said. Ibara's explanation didn't just end there. She also gave Izuku a detailed report of the current state of the hero team, which was divided. That was true, between a good leader like Kendo, who doesn't know much about Midoriya, and Class 1 who thought they knew what Izuku was capable of. That was when Mei stepped out and, after getting the all clear, sat down in the living room. There was no rest as Izuku started gathering up his villain costume. The UA staff watched. If Izuku was collecting his gear now, that only meant he was heading out for another outing. "Do you think he'll infiltrate the hero tower again?" Young Midoriya could set up even more during this time. Toshinori's hand was underneath his chin. His position was one of deep thought, but he got his answer from Aizawa. "I don't think so. The first time he did go into the hero building, it was to manipulate Uraraka, break Ibara, and to kill a hero while they slept, to instill fear. Now that the surveillance room is destroyed, he completed what he wanted to do, so he wouldn't go there again unless he needed something, which I doubt he does." Toshinori couldn't argue against that logic, so he simply agreed to nod his head as Izuku went into the bedroom. Nezu turned it off, knowing the boy was getting dressed. It took a minute or two until Izuku appeared back in the living room, fully dressed. The bloodstains on the back were noticeable, but Izuku didn't seem to mind. With him dressed, the teachers once again had the fear of Izuku heading out return, and it was only furthered as he told Mei he was leaving. Understandably, or at least to Midnight, Mei was a little mad, but unlike most girls, she seemed to understand, only asking when Izuku would be back. "Ah, young love." Midnight had her hand together and on her cheek, getting weird looks from her colleagues. Ignoring the woman, they turned back as Izuku said not to expect him in the apartment, which meant that Izuku most likely hadn't planned on returning after doing what he needs to. Just as Izuku was about to leave, he was given something by Mei. Leather holsters for his pistols, which Snipe could appreciate the craftsmanship of. They were perfect, and it looked like they fit perfectly. Izuku accordingly gave his girlfriend praise before grabbing explosives and food, including the food Mei and Izuku had leftovers of from their outing. The sight of explosives had a feeling bubbling in their chest. They were feeling anxiety. They had no clue what Izuku's intent of the bombs was. Still, they kept vigilant as after getting his goodbyes from the girls and giving his own, Izuku left to the roof of the building before he did something that stunned everyone, especially Toshinori. Initially, they were confused as Izuku stopped setting the bag full of the supplies he grabbed down before he activated OFA. The gray lighting coated Izuku, giving off little light, but that wasn't what had them shocked to their core. Izuku stayed still until he floated off the ground. Toshinori, seeing this, stood up so fast his chair fell to the ground. No, that isn't possible. The teachers looked at Toshinori for his outburst. The teacher's jaw was slightly agape as Izuku moved in a very familiar way. Toshinori, what is the matter? Raising his voice to reach the teacher, Nezu looked at the man curiously. What was so impossible that it had Toshinori, the man who at a time had the most impossible quirk known in existence, stunned? That's my master's quirk. Toshinori's legs felt weak as he fell to the floor, as Recovery Girl's voice sounded through all of their earpieces. Toshinori ... did you see? Toshinori couldn't respond as he fell to the floor, tears slipping out of his eyes as his head remained down. Master how? Toshinori's mind was invaded with memories filling his head. A woman with jet black hair and a beauty mark near her lip flashed in his mind along with her dazzling smile. Then it turned into a nightmare. Nana holding back AFO, telling him to escape and to grow stronger, her words. Counting on you, replayed in his head constantly. He had believed he was doing his master justice, but seeing Izuku with her quirk was just too much. In his mind it looked as though OFA wasn't banking on Toshinori, but Izuku. This entire time he felt like a failure. Feeling a hand underneath his arm, Toshinori looked up to see Vlad helping him, present Mike even setting up his chair for the hero to sit in. Thanking them for the help, Toshinori sat down, wiping his tears at the memory of his master as Izuku cut off the quirk, landing on the roof. Watching Izuku collect his gear, the staff wanted to say something to Toshinori, but they couldn't. No words would form in their mouth for them to vocalize it. So they stayed quiet as Izuku jumped through the air, the route already telling them he's going to be paying Yourazu a visit. Though something was odd, it seemed Izuku was at odds with something, his face displaying a mild irritation. Still, that didn't stop Izuku as he arrived at the sewer entrance, dropping in undetected before roaming through the winding tunnels. He kept walking until he looked at Yourazu. Aizawa waited. He knew that Izuku going forward was going to not be gentle with the prim and proper girl. Actually, Aizawa thought back to the previous night and Jiro's injured condition. He was 100% sure Izuku would use this along with the hunger Momo was undoubtedly experiencing, like Izuku had pointed out. The staff looked as Izuku raised his foot ready to stomp on Yourazu's back. They waited as Izuku brought his foot down, but before it could connect he seemed to be stopped by something before he put his foot away from Momo. The irritation they saw earlier was stronger as he walked out of the area Momo was in and into a small separated section before he sat down, legs crossed as he took slow deep breaths. They had no idea what the boy was doing, but he seemed to fall asleep. The staff all raised a few eyebrows, but they waited. During this time they looked at the hero team. Patrols were still running thoroughly. The injured students were resting, but a few things caught their eyes. Bakugo was in his room. Almost all of it was entirely destroyed, presumably in a bout of rage. Another was the sound of sobbing. Uraraka was covered in her blanket, being comforted by Tsu, who still looked worse for wear, the bags underneath the girl's eyes noticeable. WYT Tsu WYISD Deku acting ill like this. Uraraka's head was down as her tears stained the sheets beneath her while Tsu hugged onto her. I don't know, but I'm sure we'll figure it out, Ribbit. Nodding her head, Uraraka hugged Tsu. It was clear to some that Uraraka was overcome with her emotions. Her conflicting feeling for the game, and Izuku clashing together with the feelings tipping in Izuku's favor. Taking their eyes off that, the staff looked for anything else that was of interest before they were directed back to Izuku. They saw the boy still sitting, eyes closed, though his body was moving slightly, his face changing expressions until his eyes finally snapped open. Though they couldn't see behind his mask, they could feel the boy smiling. The smile only added to the unease building as Izuku went back over to Momo, crouching with his hand hovering over the girl's hair. The teachers reflexively braced until Izuku stopped, looking to his side as if he was staring at someone. The teachers watched as Izuku was frozen, hearing someone before he turned back to Momo, his voice clear. You're right, I could. Standing up, Izuku dug his heel into Momo's head, but the teachers were still confused. Who was he talking to? Midroya. Momo's yelling voice brought them out of her thoughts. Aizawa could see that the girl still hadn't given up and was very much still lively despite being hungry, but will it stay that way? He wasn't sure, especially after Izuku took his mask off, grabbing what looked to be one of the croissants he had eaten with Mei before taking a large bite in front of Momo. For someone so hurt, you still have quite the spirit. At least you'll take longer to break. Jiro sure as hell didn't put up much of a fight. Jiro, what the hell did you do to her? What I did? Did you forget what I had said the other day? I did hit you hard, so maybe that's on me. But here, let me refresh your memory. I specifically asked you to do me a small favor. You make materials of which a partner of mine could tinker and use to their heart's content. And as such, I wouldn't hurt our class or 1B for that matter any worse than what I had originally done. Yet what did you do? The staff could see Momo was deep in thought. Izuku was guilt-tripping the girl that they were sure of. Izuku was building a connection between her refusal and the condition of the hero team, and more specifically Gyro. So you remember. Still, you were in here, so you don't know exactly what happened. Let me see if I can explain it correctly. Now I got it. You two were best of friends in the dorms. It was plain to see you guys had a very deep friendship. You most likely told each other secrets or talked to one another all the time. You would lend your ears and she would too. Unfortunately, however, from now on that may only be reduced to an ear regarding Gyro. Izuku's slow mocking technique was perfect. Dangling the food in front of Momo was a good idea. It's like eating a juicy steak in front of a starving dog. They could at least admit that much, and the way he mentioned Gyro was hurtful in a way only Momo could imagine, as more than likely it was true. And Midoriya, why you didn't? But I did. You see, her quirk was in all honesty annoying. It had power, range, and utility. However, when it came to something physical, even though she had no trouble piercing concrete, it seems my quirk scales above that. One clap later crushed her earlobe, reducing her hearing by half. Iwarazu, you can't cry now. After all, it was your fault. Just when they thought Izuku was cold, he turned it into freezing. Izuku was placing the blame directly onto Momo's mind and shoulder. Present Mike couldn't even utter anything more than that, as he watched Momo sob. The teachers felt bad, but Aizawa looked closer. He could see Momo getting angry, something event he hadn't seen. Midoriya, I swear once I get free, I'll ruin your life. I'll reduce you to nothing. While Momo's defiance was valiant as she glared at her captor, her words were anything but what a hero would say. To the teachers, Momo could do just as she threatened. Her name alone carried a lot of power within Japan's economy, and her family's influence was on par with the #1 heroes. Nezu was already forming a way to protect Midoriya, but looking at the boy's uncaring face had him stumped. That confusion was cleared once Izuku explained that his life was already in ruins and that anyone he cared for didn't exist, actively hiding Mei from his connections. Izuku then went on explaining how he was actually going to feed Momo and set her free, but she had to go and threaten him, telling the girl not only will he finish the job with Gyro, but that he'll leave her starving until the 6th day. The teachers kept their eyes glued to the screens while Izuku walked away from Momo, who kept screaming and struggling to escape the wire binding her. That was 13 had her hands together, nervously rubbing against each other. She could describe what she just witnessed. Intense. Aizawa, finishing it, narrowed his eyes on the screen while everyone else nodded, agreeing that he gave the best description. Hound Dog was shaking his head, writing even more down in his notebook, and his writing only continued as Izuku spoke, though it was directed at someone who wasn't there. Did you see how she reacted? Her friend isn't even permanently half-deaf, just injured, yet she was so ready to ruin my life. Izuku's head was turned to the side as though he was conversing with a phantom. This caused the staff to question the boy's sanity, but they shrugged it off. Maybe he was ranting to himself, but that theory died when he spoke again. Yeah, but I don't remember asking if you approved of what I did. I asked whether you saw it or not. You see, this is the true nature of these students. They all have a side to them they hide deep down. I know you saw what happened with Kosai. A motivated, almost well-mannered boy, except he preyed on the girls of both classes, stealing what he could for his own pleasure, and just showing them the side they deny, like Yorazu. She comes from a prestigious family. Her threat actually had substance. With her family's influence, I can be blacklisted from every hero school in Japan with a phone call. He's definitely speaking with someone. Vlad pointed this out. None of what Izuku said sounded like someone ranting to themselves. He was responding to something. Cleanse the school. Don't be ridiculous, I have no such goals. They turned their backs on me, so I want to show everyone who they really are, not what they made themselves to be. I want to tear down their reputation as they did to me when they branded me a villain and tried to get me arrested. I'm long tired from being used by everyone around me. My own mother, my friends, my bullies, everyone. I'm only kept around for when I'm convenient to break, so in turn I think it's fair I break them back physically or mentally. Whatever means necessary. No matter how personal or how painful. Now they were definitely sure. Turning to Hound Dog, they looked at the counselor, who was busy writing as much in his notebook as he could. Hound Dog was busy, so the teachers went back to the screens, though this seemed to be a textbook case of someone going crazy. Izuku was responding to people they couldn't see. Still, what Izuku said had them thinking. What did he mean, cleanse the school? Sure, Kosai and the others had some problems, but to be calling it a cleansing seemed a bit much, though they were getting information about their students through Midoriya's actions. Still, what Izuku had said after that had set off a couple of alarm bells. Izuku truly was using this as a way to get revenge for his treatment, though they had already speculated as much. Hearing it straight from Izuku's mouth made them a bit frightened, his crimson eye making it more intimidating. Still, they looked as Izuku walked into a large sewer area, once again talking to no one about training. And just like the boy said, after setting his stuff down, he had begun training, floating once again, though this time he scored through the air. Hours went by, and that was how the rest of the night went. Realizing that the potential for something happening was low, Nezu had everyone rest, though Aizawa offered to stay up. Allowing him to, Nezu closed his eyes. Aizawa watched the monitor for hours as Izuku trained and the heroes fell asleep. Sighing, he looked down in his hand. There was an empty coffee mug. Groaning silently, he got up from his seat. It was already 4 a.m. and nothing other than Izuku speaking a few times had occurred. Going over to a large table that had an assortment of machines and snacks, Aizawa started brewing another pot of coffee until he spotted a notebook on the floor. Going over to pick it up, he missed when Izuku vanished from his training site along with an invisible figure, leaving a room silently. Still picking up the notebook, Aizawa spotted that it was Hound Dog's, the same he was using to write down about the game. Flipping it open, Aizawa looked at the detailed pages. Almost all of them were on Izuku, though some were on the other students as well. Still, it was mostly filled with Midoriya. Aizawa read a plethora of theories Hound Dog had created and connections, but all if not most seemed to fall flat. It seems Izuku was an enigma to even a registered counselor. Reading, Aizawa heard the coffee pot start to fill, the plashing noises masking the silence of the room, and even more than that, the conversation between one student and another person on a phone. The night was ending, yet not one of the staff members knew the true identity of one of their students and another's plan going forward. So, Knight, do you plan on apprehending the Invisible One today? Inside the large section of the sewer system of which Izuku was using as a training area, Hikage spoke out loud. His question directed to the boy who was sitting, his legs crossed and his hands placed calmly on his lap. Though if one were to look closer, they could see his hands twitching. No, not yet. If I do so now, the game will be cancelled before I can get my hands on Bakugo, before I can fulfill the purpose of the game. Izuku opened his eyes, his now red one looking directly at Hikage. His voice seemed odd though, not because of his mask, but it sounded in pain. But I do have some things I need to do. Yesterday was the only day of rest the heroes will have. I played with my food long enough today. I have to dwindle their numbers significantly. Standing up, Izuku kept squeezing his hand. A numbing pain-filled sensation was constantly running through it, but he did his best to ignore the bone fragments in his hand grinding on his nerves. So do you regret your decision to spend time with that girl? Nana stepped up, questioning Izuku, who was walking over to the large bag of supplies he brought, taking a few explosives he brought with him. Not at all. But I have a few days left and still so many people I need to torment before that time is up. Taking the explosives, Izuku turned to leave, not before he made sure his gear was fully equipped. Carrying a C4, Izuku suddenly dropped it to the floor. Looking, Nana and Hikage saw him holding his wrist, squeezing hard. Fuck. This had been something that had been happening often during their training. Sometimes the boy would stop complaining about a pain in his hands that seemed unbearable. Ninth, are you okay? Nana walked up to the boy, her ghostly figure placing a hand on his back. Though it did nothing physically, maybe it would help him mentally. Now I know why Recovery Girl made the painkillers so strong. Izuku chuckled to himself. His chronic nerve pain had been active for around 5 hours now. It had been the longest he had gone without taking the painkillers he was prescribed. This wasn't a mistake by any means, however. Izuku had purposefully stopped taking the drugs. The pain in his hands would go away eventually, either by his nerves giving out or him accepting the pain. His low tolerance for it now was due to him using the painkillers to escape, something he didn't want anymore no matter how painful. He knew eventually he would have to get used to it, so what a better time than now. Bending down, he picked up the dropped items before walking out, heading back to where he left Momo. Walking into the area, he saw the girl wide awake, already shaking due to the pain in her stomach. His shoes echoing off the ground garnered her attention. Rise and shine. Grabbing Momo's bound wrists, Izuku stood the girl up, undoing her restraints. Now free, Momo tried to swipe at Lucifer, only for him to dodge. Now that's no way to greet someone. Using his left hand, Izuku pumped OFA into his system, backhanding Momo to the ground with 5%, causing a few teeth to dislodge from the girl's mouth. The knuckle plating in his gloves doing their job quite well. Good thing you're a Yorazu. I'm sure you can get those replaced. Fuck you. Momo was still ever so defiant as she spit at Izuku, hitting him in his eye with her blood-filled saliva. Wiping his face, Izuku glared at the girl before raising his foot, stomping her face into the ground, bruising it almost instantly as her cheek swelled. With her shut up, Izuku grabbed her ponytail, dragging the girl forward as she tried to pry herself from his grip until they reached a large staircase in the lair. Dragging the girl up, Izuku didn't care that Momo had to suffer the steps that bruised her perfect skin, nor that it scaped so bad she had started bleeding. Reaching the top, Izuku looked around before finding a large metal railing. Taking Momo to it, he bound her wrists to the metal. Momo was then turned to face Lucifer, her eyes still holding unprecedented amounts of hate within them as he crouched down to her face, placing a hand on her leg, going to the joint in her knees. You know, Yorazu, I'm sure Minda would love to see something like this, you tied up defenseless, wearing a glorified stripper uniform, without a chance to fight back. The crunching of a bone reverberated in the room as Momo screamed in pain, trying desperately to escape. Izuku still had his hands placed on her knee, though it seemed to be bending the wrong way now. Oh, don't worry, it was a clean break, though you might not be able to walk until Recovery Girl heals it. I'll leave you with the other one, not like you can do that much with it. Wait, I almost forgot, since I'm feeling nice, how about something to eat? Digging into his suit, Izuku pulled out about half a day of rations. Hearing Momo's stomach rumbled as she stared through tear-filled eyes. Extending his arm, Izuku gauged a specific distance before placing the food at the ends of Momo's feet, just out of her reach. Nodding his head, he turned around, heading back to the lower level, his bombs his next objective. Going through the winding tunnels, his path seemed random, though it was calculated. Izuku knew where he exactly wanted to go, evident as he placed bombs on the roof of the sewer in some locations. This was a time-consuming process, but he didn't mind. Let's see, it's around here. Looking at the roof of the tunnel he was in, Izuku's eyes were looking at a single spot above him. Said spot had pipes surrounding the area, telling him that what he was looking for was indeed in the area. Reaching up, he secured one of his final 2 bombs onto the section. Nezu, this bomb is going to be set off within the next 2 hours, be ready. Speaking into his earpiece, Izuku didn't wait for a response as he walked to the nearest exit. Climbing out, Izuku was hit with another wave of pain in his hand. Breathing, he calmed himself. He had no time to deal with this pain. For now, he needed to fulfill his goal for the morning. Walking the streets, he had no fear of being out to the heroes, not when the people of the city already saw him as a savior. Though walking, he did have to deal with an influx of curious and praising civilians, not that he cared. Until he saw what he wanted. Like how the real city of Japan works, there was a butcher shop, a selection of meats varying in prices, but he wants there to do any shopping for his consumption. No, he was there because he had a delivery he wanted to make. Going inside, he was greeted by the student running the shop, a student in the business course of UA. Izuku already saw that he was doing so for an experience within the field. Walking up, Izuku looked at the choices of meat before he made a choice. It was simple, and it was something not many people would think of eating. His choice was a fresh pig's head, its organs inside fully intact, including the brain, which Izuku could see through the section of its head. With his choice made, Izuku paid for the meat before walking outside. And despite being in public, he took his fist, shoving it inside the brain cavity of the pig, scooping some of it out as it spilled on the street, some of the still fresh blood dripping onto the floor. Izuku dug out some room in the head before pulling his hand out the inside of the pig's head, looking like mush in some parts. What do you plan on doing with that? Hikage spoke up, having watched the disgusting process of Izuku digging out the carcass of a pig's head. Well, do you know what it means once a pig's head is delivered on your doorstep? Taking out his last bomb, Izuku shoved the device into the head before he held it, walking to the hero building, only stopping once he reached a small convenience store, borrowing a paper and a pen, stabbing the pen into the pig's head, a message written on the paper which was now stamped in. No, I'm unfamiliar with the symbol eyes that presents. Gangs such as the Yakuza use similar tactics like this one. Take Italy for example. It's not uncommon between 2 crime families for something similar like this to happen. When marking a sign of death, the body or part of an animal is presented to the target. It could vary from many different things, such as a fillet of fish, a horse's head, or in my case a pig's head. So you're sending a threat, but why the bomb? Nana spoke up, her apparition appearing as Izuku carried the head, continuing his route to the hero HQ. The water supply of the city is already dwindling, and the morale of the hero team is slowly rising despite the terrible incidents that have befallen them. They are trying to save their public image by sending out patrols. That can't happen. This head serves 2 purposes, sending a message and also a way to tarnish their image even further. No one wants to smell or see a hero who has been bathed in blood. And with the bombs I've planted, ridding themselves of the smell won't be so easy. The past users could already tell what his plan was, and they had to agree the setup was perfect, though there was an issue. Not one they'll tell him, but we're sure he already figured out. Izuku activated OFA, his body arching with gray lightning as the smell of ash surrounded him, a replacement from the original smell of the ozone layer that usually accompanied it. With him putting 35% into his legs, Izuku ran off his speed, already passing streets and districts before he arrived near the hero HQ. With their surveillance room disabled, he wasn't worried about being caught on any cameras. As he walked up to the main door of the building, setting the pig head down, Izuku rang the door of the building before he used float, his body flying upwards as he took a spot on top of the hero building. His attention purely focused on the stolen earpiece. He had heard the communications of the heroes. Itsuka Kendo kept watch on the windows of the hero building. There still hadn't been any reports of activity from Lucifer, and while that should be good news, it was in reality really bad. The debates over whether Izuku would rest after taking that amount of damage was something she had considered all sides, and hearing what her sister class had said about the boy and how they described him, she concluded that Izuku wouldn't be out for long even if his entire body was broken. Patrol Squad 2 and 5, anything to report? Checking in with her teams that she sent out, Itsuka was heavily invested in keeping the channels between heroes open at all times. They still hadn't found Momo, but Itsuka had only a single clue. Out of all the districts that have been attacked, there was one that hadn't been the center of any incident. The East District. Itsuka had already sent patrols to survey the area. She had a feeling that if Lucifer was hiding anywhere, it would be there. This is Patrol 2. Nothing to report. Civilian opinion is still negative. Todoroki's voice was loud and clear, his report short but straight to the point. Nodding her head, Itsuka turned around, looking at the coffee table in the middle of the room, a map of the city highlighted. This was Shoto's patrol route, and with nothing to report in the East District, she hoped Patrol 5 would have something. This is Patrol 5 Tentacle reporting. Nothing of note in the West District. A few run-ins with disapproving citizens had been encountered. You didn't take any action against them, did you? Itsuka had a bit of worry well up in her. Looking around, she looked at the still injured heroes. Kyoka was still down and out, and Shishida was still nursing his wounds, while the others were still somewhat injured, such as Uraraka and Mina. Both of them, along with the rest, were awaiting their orders to take over patrol. No, as you told us, we haven't taken any action against them. Though we did try to alleviate and reconcile our image, they are still calling for Bakugo's head. They can keep calling because once I blow up that fucking Deku, they're next. Bakugo yelled into his earpiece, causing Itsuka to get irritated. Bakugo, this is exactly why we are in the position we are in. Just shut your mouth. What the fuck did you say, man? Hands quirkless or not, I'll beat your fucking ass. Bakugo walked up and into the face of Itsuka, the two glaring at each other. Itsuka had to deal with Monoma, but as much as he was a pain in her ass, Bakugo was proven to be an even bigger one. Itsuka couldn't see why the prideful bastard couldn't understand that it was his fault they were behind Izuku every step of the way. Why now the city has turned against them, the heroes. She wanted to knock his teeth out, but before the situation could escalate, they were interrupted by Kirishima grabbing a hold of Bakugo while Tsu grabbed Itsuka, the two of them trying to lessen the tension. Though their movements were weak, neither of them had gotten much sleep since the first day. But the constant thought of Lucifer targeting them, along with their guilt of not being able to save the people right next and in front of them, plagued their minds. Becca bro, come on, now isn't the time for that. Pushing Bakugo back, Kirishima tried to quell the explosive boy's rage. Tsu also pushed Itsuka back. Kendo, you need to focus on Lucifer Ribbit. Itsuka stared at Tsu, looking into the frog girl's baggy eyes that craved sleep. Sighing, she turned from Bakugo. Patrols 2 and 5 report back to the HQ. It's time for the ringing of the HQ doors got the attention of every hero in the room. Report back immediately. Lucifer may be at the HQ. Yelling, Itsuka wasn't going to take any chances. Looking at the heroes in the room, her eyes looked at Kirishima. His quirk, like Tatsu's, meant he couldn't be eliminated if he was shot while his skin was hardened. Kirishima, could you check the door with your quirk? We'll be right behind you in case. Nodding his head, Kirishima hardened his skin. He knew why he was selected and he agreed that he was the best option for it. While the patrol teams got back to HQ, they had lower offensive power. Shinsaburo, get ready to use your capture scarf. Looking at the insomniac boy, Kirishima walked to the door, opening it slowly before he swung it open, his eyes shaped as he surveyed the area. Looking down, he saw what Lucifer had delivered. The pig head was staring directly at him. Lifting it, Kirishima stepped back, closing the door. He didn't want to remove the paper that was stuck in the head. Guys, showing the head, the entire room was disgusted, Kota fainting as he saw the head. Jesus Christ. Itsuka put a hand over her mouth as Kirishima walked forward, placing the head down. They had no idea what it meant, but Shinso did. Walking up, he grabbed the piece of paper, ripping it off as he read it. What does it say? Uraraka, sitting up, looked at Shinso curiously as she put her head near the pigs. It's another warning. He's saying that if the time to leave has shortened, we have only a few hours before he hunts us all down. And Bakugo, it seems he's calling you out directly. Handing over the note to the others, Shinso looked back at the pig head, his face covered partly by his scar. One by one, the hero team read it, and it was indeed true. It was saying by the morning of the 6th day, if they don't leave or forfeit, he will hunt them down to the fullest extent. But why the pig head? It doesn't make sense why he would do something like that. It's different from the other messages he has sent. Yui spoke up, her monotone voice hinted with a little bit of confusion. Usually, Izuku's messages were sent through the media, or with one of his victims doing this made no sense. Maybe there's more to the head. Reaching his hand out, Monoma touched the head, trying to see if there was anything wrong with it. Itsuka watched on, opening her mouth to speak. Most likely, but we shouldn't too. Boom. Just as she was saying this, the pig head Monoma had his hand in front of, exploded blood spraying all over the heroes. Almost no one was saved from the mess as bits of brain, tongue, and more splashed in their faces. Itsuka even getting a mouthful of brain matter and blood. Though that wasn't it. Screaming in pain, Monoma held his hand at, leaking blood all over the floor. The skull of the pig exploding outwards acted like shrapnel, cutting into Monoma's hand, which was in front of it. The bone fragments also flew in every direction, slicing parts of the heroes' costumes, allowing the blood to seep into the gear. The stench of blood hit everyone's noses, some even throwing up, such as Itsuka, who emptied her mouth of the raw meat and blood that hit her. The map of the city the heroes were using was also drenched in blood. That fucking Deku. Bakugo brought his head up. Some blood painted the bottom of his hero gear, but he was for the most part saved from this. They should have expected something like this. It took a while, but eventually Itsuka regained control. They looked as though they had just butchered someone. Standing there soaked in blood, Itsuka turned when the door opened. Todoroki's patrol group, consisting of Shoto, Mainta, Tagara, and Takoyami, arrived along with Shoji's group, which had him. Shiro, Ryuko, and Rin came inside just as the pig had exploded, evident by the blood which painted their clothes. What happened? Mainta yelled out, his face pale as he looked at his classmates, covering his nose when the blood hit him. The others all had similar questions, but Itsuka took control. We'll explain everything, but first some of us need to wash up. We can't be covered in blood with our patrol routes. Someone patch Monoma's hand and keep a lookout for any deliveries from Lucifer or civilians. If you don't recognize what it is, don't bring it inside. Lucifer is starting to ship his bombs directly to us. Disgusted, Itsuka took a few of the girls while some of the boys went to the large shower rooms on the bottom floor. They needed to wash this blood off as soon as possible, or else they'll reek of it in public, though due to capacity not all of them could right away. Itsuka got undressed, taking her hero costume off before handing it up. She and the other girls will have to hand wash their hero costumes, but for now, they need to wash off their bodies. Washing it was Itsuka. Uraraka, and Yui, the three of them gingerly washed their bodies. They were still running off emergency supply water, so they had to wash fast. Using whatever they had in there, they tried to rid themselves of the stink. None of them spoke. The mood in the room was at an all-time low. After what just happened, they either were still too disgusted or shocked at what occurred. Itsuka raised her head, the water hitting her face, covering it in warmth as she scrubbed her body. It was only at times like this she could think without having to deal with any problems. Her mind was focused on what now. To her, it was clear Lucifer was trying to still tarnish their image. Heroes covered in blood weren't good no matter how you looked at it, and using a pig's head to disguise a bomb. The situation got complicated more and more. Sighing, she relaxed her body, the warm water giving her relief until it suddenly stopped. It wasn't just her shower, however, as the rest too also stopped. What? The emergency supply is supposed to last for days. Why did it stop? Itsuka opened her teal eyes, searching for the cause. There wasn't any way they ran through the water that fast. Stepping back onto the floor of the large bathroom, a loud crash rocked the building as the floor underneath all the girls started cracking before it caved in on itself. The girls were scared, naked, and confused as they fell through the floor, landing in the sewer system that ran underneath the city, but they were alone. Falling next to them were the boys who had also been showering, Juzo, Shihai, and Shishida, all of them as naked as they were. The girls covered themselves out of embarrassment, and so did the boys, but they had no time to feel that as they heard the hero team rush into the bathrooms asking what happened. But before any of them could respond, the sound of rushing water eclipsed the tunnel. Looking at one side, the group was frozen still. Why is that? Itsuka's words died out in her mouth. A wall of sewage was rushing towards their direction all at once, its water green and revolting. Izuku stood on top of the Hero HQ, a smirk under his mask as his thumb was pressed onto a detonator. The sewer system should be flooding right now. While some will smell like blood, the others will be covered in their filth. Izuku had set this up exactly how he wanted. His bombs rocked the city as the pipes underneath people's feet burst. While he had taken out the water distribution plant, the emergency system still removed any waste from the drains of the city. Blowing up a few of those pipes made sure that the nastiest parts would reach the location of where some of the hero team fell. While he didn't expect a high number, he knew now that they smelt like shit, they would most likely be treated like it by the people of the city. Izuku took no time to bask in the aftermath. By his estimate, he had around a minute or two before he was able to make his entrance. Turning to a large ventilation system on the roof, Izuku active full cowling, grabbing onto a large industrial fan. This was the AC system of the hero building. Now that the hero team smelt bad, it would take some time before the pig carcass starts to decay, but with a little tweak, he can make happen in just an hour or two. Exposing a dead animal's carcass and inner body to heat will speed up the rate at which decomposition starts to take effect. Izuku cocked his fist back before slamming it into the large fan, destroying it. Without the constant stream of cool air running in the building, the heat will build up, affecting the blood and remains of the pig. Heat was dangerous when it was exposed to raw meat, which is why preserved foods are kept cold and why after cooking a steak it tends to go bad faster than when it was raw. Destroying the fan, Izuku went to the edge of the building, focusing his mind on the remains of the hero team. Pinpoint danger sense kicked and he could see the positions of every hero team member clearly. But that wasn't his goal. There were 6 people who were moving rapidly, and watching them slow down, Izuku jumped off the side of the building, pulling out his hardballer pistol before twisting his body into his shoot style, striking his foot down through the asphalt of the street below, entering the sewer system as he landed. Turning to one side of the tunnel, he readied his pistol, watching as an influx of sewage turned the corner slowly down before it reached him. As it stopped, the large mess of green water spit out a few passengers. Kendo, Uraraka, Yui, Juzo, Shihai, and Shishida, all of them coughing as their body was slick with garbage, feces, and urine. Izuku was glad Mei had built air filters into his mask, as he knew this didn't smell pleasant. Looking at the disgusting heap, Izuku aimed, firing off several shots, hitting each and every single one of them in the legs, causing them to jolt in pain. This wasn't necessary, but it was fun. Looking at the group before him, Izuku put his pistol away, grabbing Itsuka by her hair along with Juzo. The rest had open wounds, and with the bacteria in the water it was likely they would get sick, but with these 2 they were in near perfect condition. Raising them up, Izuku looked to the hole he made, about to leave when he heard Todoroki. Midoriya, stop. Turning, Izuku looked at Todoroki before the 2 captured heroes in his grasp. Sorry, I don't think that's possible, Todoroki. But before you get all jumpy, I want you to look at your current situation. The methane in this sewer system will incinerate anyone it touches, except of course you and me the second you spark your fireside. Now your ice, you'll end up putting your friends into hypothermic shock. Their bodies slick with liquid already has the freezing point and their blood lower. Now this can go one of 2 ways. Either you let me go or you take the chance and potentially kill your fellow classmates. Now it's time for you to choose. Either way, I win. Izuku and Todoroki stared at each other, neither moving. While the injured on the floor gasped for air, one person, in particular, looked at Izuku with her brown pleading eyes. The atmosphere was tense, and the next move will decide which way this goes. But just as Izuku said, there is only one victor in either exchange. With that, guys, I hoped you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye bye.